Imagine this. You stand in a vast white room, no walls, no ceiling, just a floor stretching endlessly in every direction. Before you is a table. On it are hundreds, maybe thousands, of keys. Each one glimmers with a unique design, each promising access to something different. A door appears, just one for now. You pick a key, open the door, and step through. But the moment you do, the room vanishes, and with it, every other key you didn't choose. There's no going back. And here's the catch. You'll never know what was behind those other doors. Some may have led to paradise, others to pain. But all you'll ever have is the single path you picked, and the haunting awareness of the countless others you didn't. Now ask yourself, was the freedom to choose really a gift or a curse? We live in a world that worships choice. More options mean more freedom, right? You can scroll through thousands of movies, browse an endless sea of dating profiles, select from infinite career paths, ideologies, philosophies, diets, lifestyles. You are the god of your own decision-making. But why then do you feel paralyzed? Why, with so many doors open, does every step forward feel like a betrayal of all the other steps you could have taken? Why does deciding, truly deciding, feel like a kind of quiet death? Not the loud, tragic kind, but something colder, the silent burial of all the lives you'll never live. You stand in a grocery aisle, staring at 50 brands of cereal. The illusion is that you're free. But deep down, something inside you knows you're trapped. Not by a lack of options, but by their overwhelming abundance. And the more you gain the ability to choose anything, the more you seem to lose the capacity to be satisfied with anything. Have you noticed? When you pick a restaurant, you immediately second-guess whether you should have gone somewhere else. When you start a relationship, you wonder if someone better is still out there. You finish one book and feel guilty about the 100 others waiting on your shelf. Even joy is haunted by the ghosts of unlived alternatives. It's not just anxiety. It's something deeper, existential. As if your freedom is turning in on itself, like a beautiful flower devouring its own petals. And here lies the paradox no one dares to face. Freedom doesn't always liberate. Sometimes it suffocates. What if the more choices we have, the more fragmented we become? What if the very thing we call freedom is quietly splintering our identity, pulling us in every direction until we are no longer whole? You've been told that the more doors you can open, the richer your life will be. But what if the key to peace is not opening more doors, but learning how to close them decisively and never look back? What if clarity doesn't come from having more options, but from finally being able to say no to most of them? And what if the greatest burden of modern life isn't oppression or limitation, but limitlessness itself? When everything is possible, nothing feels meaningful. When every path is open, none feels sacred. And when the world tells you that you can be anything, you're quietly left wondering who you actually are. So the question begins to emerge, not just with psychological weight, but with existential gravity. Can too much freedom destroy us? And more disturbingly, has it already begun to? You feel it, don't you? That dull ache in your chest when you're told to just follow your passion. That quiet despair when another door closes behind you and 1,000 more fling open. The panic of trying to become everything and slowly becoming nothing. This isn't just a modern dilemma. It's a silent epidemic. A wound dressed in the glitter of liberty. A psychological labyrinth where every turn offers hope, yet somehow you end up more lost than before. You were taught to believe that choice is the ultimate path to happiness. But now, standing in front of infinite doors, you hesitate. You wonder, what if the power to choose isn't freeing you, but quietly breaking you? And so, we must go deeper, not just into our minds, but into the bones of our culture, the roots of our psychology, the old voices of philosophy that warned us, long before the world was filled with options, that freedom, unchecked, can become its own prison. The next step is not one of comfort, but of clarity. A descent into the hidden mechanisms of desire, identity, and meaning. And only once we understand why this burden exists, can we begin to see the way out. Are you ready to go further? The air gets colder when you begin to see the truth. The surface glitter of freedom begins to dull. The shelves stacked with choices suddenly resemble cages. Something inside starts to whisper, not with panic but with eerie clarity, you were never in control. You were just seduced by the illusion of it. But where does this illusion come from? And why does it grip you so tightly? Let's begin here. The modern world wasn't designed for peace. It was designed for stimulation. And in such a world, freedom of choice becomes the ultimate drug. Not because it frees you, but because it keeps you hooked. Psychologically, your brain is hardwired for survival, not for abundance. In the wild, too many options didn't exist. You took what was available or risked death. Your ancestors didn't sit around comparing types of berries or careers or romantic partners. They adapted, acted, moved. But now, you are bombarded. Every day you are asked to make hundreds of micro decisions. What to wear, what to eat, what to read, who to message, what to believe. Each one seems harmless. But beneath the surface, your mind is quietly drowning in noise. This is called decision fatigue, a term coined by psychologists to describe the mental exhaustion that builds when the brain is forced to make too many choices. Studies show that people begin to make worse decisions or no decision at all when faced with excess options. You freeze. You panic. You procrastinate. Or worse, you make a choice, then spend the next hour wondering if you chose wrong. And yet you blame yourself. You call it laziness, indecisiveness, fear. But it's none of those. It's the system overloading your cognitive machinery, feeding you more than your psyche was ever built to handle. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." But in today's culture of infinite options, we don't just avoid the soul, we drown it in choice. We mistake movement for meaning. We keep scrolling, swiping, clicking, consuming, hoping that somewhere in this ocean of options the answer will emerge. But the soul doesn't scream. It waits. And every time you chase a new distraction, it watches you drift further from yourself. Jean-Paul Sartre, the French existentialist, explored this paradox. He called it the burden of freedom. In his view, we are condemned to be free, meaning we are forced to choose always. There is no escape from choice. No higher power to dictate what we should do. No divine map. Just the terrifying responsibility of shaping our own lives. But here's where it gets darker. Freedom isn't just about action, it's about identity. Every choice you make is a rejection of countless other versions of yourself. And so, freedom becomes a process of killing all the people you could have been. Each decision you make is a funeral for a life unlived. That's the part no one talks about. You don't just lose time or opportunity. You lose selves, potential, alternate realities. And if you're not deeply grounded in who you are, this becomes unbearable. Schopenhauer, the philosopher of pessimism, wrote that human desire is a bottomless pit, one that leads only to suffering. To him, the more we desire, the more we suffer. And what is freedom of choice, if not the exponential expansion of desire? Every new option is another seed of longing, another way to feel incomplete. We do not desire freedom. We desire satisfaction. But the modern world has convinced us that freedom leads to satisfaction. So we chase it, never realizing that freedom in excess becomes like drinking salt water. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. And so you scroll. You choose. You change. And still you ache. Aldous Huxley, in Brave New World, envisioned a society not ruled by fear but by pleasure. A world where people are pacified not by chains, but by their own indulgences. He saw a future where too much freedom, too much stimulation, too much choice would not liberate, but sedate. Keep people so numb with pleasure and distraction that they'd forget what it meant to live with depth. Sound familiar? You were told you could be anything. But what happens when being anything quietly turns into being no one? Nietzsche warned of this as well. He called it the abyss. That space you stare into when you realize that traditional meanings and structures no longer hold. That God is dead and meaning is no longer handed to you. You must create it. But to create it, you must commit. And to commit, you must sacrifice every other possibility. But in a world drunk on options, sacrifice feels like loss. Commitment feels like confinement. And so we float, unanchored, unfulfilled, free but not whole. This is the silent erosion of the self. The part you don't notice until it's too late. You keep chasing freedom, believing the next choice will finally bring peace. But all it brings is another fork in the road. Another splitting of the self. Another round of what-ifs and should-haves. And beneath it all, something ancient stirs. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, once said, "When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure." And here it is, the modern soul drowning in freedom, starving for meaning. Because here's the hidden truth. Freedom without purpose is a void. It is not evil, not cruel, but cold, silent, infinite. It gives you every possible path but no compass, every possible answer but no question. And without an inner foundation, without values, purpose, direction, freedom becomes unbearable. A mocking echo in an empty hall. And that's the core of the problem. Not that you have choices, but that you don't know why you're choosing. And so the deeper question rises, not with panic, but with slow-burning urgency. How do you build a self in a world where you can be anything? Or more terrifying still, what if you never do? But we are not done descending yet. Because this isn't just personal. The consequences of this hidden weight don't stop with the individual mind. They bleed into our culture, our relationships, our politics, our sense of reality itself. And only once we see those consequences clearly can we understand the full cost of our modern freedom. The next part of the journey will not be kind, but it will be honest. You wake up, check your phone, and before your feet touch the floor, you've already made a dozen choices. What to read, who to reply to, what emotion to feel based on a notification. And most terrifying of all, you didn't consciously choose any of it. You just responded. This is how the burden of too much freedom begins to devour not just individuals, but entire societies. Because what begins in the quiet corridors of the mind slowly leaks into the world around us. And when everyone is overwhelmed, uncertain, and fragmented by too many options, we build a culture that reflects our confusion. We create a civilization of distracted ghosts. Let's start with the most intimate terrain, relationships. Once, love was seen as sacred. Messy, painful, demanding, but precious. People endured, fought for each other, chose each other. But now there's always a better option one swipe away. A younger face, a more compatible personality, a smoother life. Why stay in something difficult when the illusion of something easier is just within reach? This is the emotional virus of the age. Replace over repair. Commitment begins to look irrational. Depth begins to look dangerous. Intimacy begins to look outdated. So we float from one partner to the next, hoping for the perfect fit, never realizing that real love only grows when you stop searching. And it's not just romance. Friendships too suffer. Because when your attention is fragmented, your loyalty is as well. Everyone becomes replaceable. And when people feel replaceable, they stop showing up as their full selves. They guard, perform, hide. Vulnerability shrinks. Trust fades. We mistake connection for contact. We think knowing someone's status update is knowing their soul. But the deepest cost? Identity. In a world where you can endlessly reinvent yourself, what does it mean to actually be someone? How do you anchor to anything when your self-image changes with every new trend, every new ideology, every new wave of public opinion? The culture encourages it. Be adaptable, be flexible, be constantly improving. But this improvement often means morphing, performing, losing your center to meet the demands of a world that keeps moving the goalposts. It's the Instagram entrepreneur reinventing themselves as a wellness guru, the teacher now chasing online fame, the parent quietly wondering if they should have become an influencer, the teenager paralyzed by the sheer number of possible futures, all of them filtered, curated, commodified. We no longer pursue meaning. We pursue brand identity. And in this pursuit, something sacred decays. Because when everything becomes a choice, even morality becomes optional. We treat ethics like fashion, wearing what fits the moment, shedding it when it becomes inconvenient. Conviction becomes dangerous because it limits your flexibility. Standing for something means closing the door on everything else. So we don't stand. We float. This is the heart of the modern crisis. A society built on endless options slowly forgets how to choose anything with conviction. Even politics, once about vision and leadership, has become a theater of preference and performance. Leaders are brands. Parties are products. Truth is just another perspective. You choose your narrative like you choose your coffee order. The line between freedom and chaos thins. And then it breaks. And all the while, something is happening deep within your brain. Something cold, invisible, and terrifyingly efficient. Your nervous system is being rewired. Neurologically, your brain interprets too many choices as danger. Not metaphorically, literally. Studies show that excess choice activates areas of the brain associated with threat detection. The amygdala fires up. Cortisol levels rise. Your fight or flight response kicks in, not because you're being chased by a predator, but because you're choosing between 3 brands of almond milk. And in this state, your prefrontal cortex, The part responsible for reasoning, planning, long-term vision, goes offline. You revert to instinct, shortcuts, cognitive biases. You don't choose wisely. You choose impulsively, emotionally, desperately. The more you're offered, the less you actually think. And this is no accident. Corporations understand this. Social media platforms exploit it. Marketing campaigns are engineered around it. They flood you with choices not to empower you, but to exhaust you, because an exhausted mind is easier to influence. A person who can't commit to anything is far more likely to buy everything. So you keep scrolling, keep shopping, keep searching, thinking you're making choices, but you're not choosing. You're reacting. And slowly the cost mounts. Your attention span shrinks. Your anxiety spikes. Your dreams blur. The voice inside that once said this is who I am becomes a whisper, then a silence, then a void. And here's the darkest part. You don't even realize it's happening, because this isn't a loud collapse. It's a soft erosion, a slow surrender of your sovereignty. You still feel free. You still think you're in control, but the control has shifted from within you to the world around you. You're still moving, but you're no longer steering. You laugh at the past, at arranged marriages, fixed careers, tribal rituals. You call them primitive, oppressive, but they gave something you no longer have: structure, coherence, meaning through limitation. And here's the paradox. While we fight against anything that constrains us, we secretly crave the very boundaries we destroy. Because without them we are adrift, free to go anywhere and thus bound to nowhere. So ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you made a choice without second-guessing it? When was the last time you felt truly anchored in your values, unchanged by trend, untouched by pressure? When was the last time you said no and meant it fully without fear of what you were giving up? If you hesitate to answer, you're not alone. You are part of a society that has forgotten how to choose. And until we understand the full scope of what we've lost, we cannot hope to reclaim what matters most. But all is not lost. There are those who have broken free, who have rejected the noise, who have built lives not on endless options but on powerful convictions. The next step in this journey is not easy. It demands something the modern world fears: limitation, clarity, courage. But it also offers something the modern world has almost forgotten exists: freedom, not as endless choice but as deep alignment. Are you ready to rebel? Imagine waking up to the realization that you are not who you thought you were. That the version of yourself you've been chasing, the one constantly reshaped by endless choices, external pressures, and shifting goals, was never truly you. You look in the mirror and see not a person but a reflection of your choices. An amalgamation of paths not taken, identities assumed, desires adopted without question. And in that moment, something inside of you begins to stir, a rebellious whisper against all the rules, all the noise, all the distractions. The very air around you feels different, lighter, freer. Because for the first time in years, you realize you are not bound by all the choices in front of you. You are free because you can choose to stop chasing them. What if the way to break free from this overwhelming sea of options isn't to gain more control over them, but to stop letting them control you? This is the first step toward liberation, rejecting the myth of limitless choice. It's not easy. It's not glamorous. It goes against everything the world has told you about personal growth and success. But here's the truth that many won't tell you. You don't need more options to be happy. You need fewer. You need clarity. Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher who famously declared that God is dead, also understood that human beings cannot thrive in a vacuum of meaning. When we let go of old structures, religion, tradition, societal rules, we are left with an empty canvas. But Nietzsche didn't want us to cower in that emptiness. He wanted us to create. To create, however, you need something foundational, a bedrock, values, a purpose. Not just endless exploration, but decisive commitment. When you narrow your focus and choose to live by principles, you are not less free. You are more free because your actions begin to have depth. In a world that worships flexibility, commitment is revolutionary. Viktor Frankl, whose concentration camp experiences led to the creation of his theory of logotherapy, understood that freedom without meaning is a soul-crushing force. Frankl argued that the key to survival wasn't just physical endurance, but having something to live for, something to commit to even in the darkest times. The same holds true for us today. When we limit our options, we stop spinning in circles, chasing something new, and instead we can focus on what really matters. To break free from the tyranny of choice, you must first confront the fear of limitation. It's terrifying, isn't it? The thought of cutting away all the excess, jobs, relationships, possessions, desires. For years, you've been told that growth means acquiring more. More experiences, more possessions, more power. But the truth is that freedom isn't about accumulation. It's about subtraction. One of the most profound examples of this radical shift in perspective comes from the minimalist movement. People who used to define themselves by their careers, possessions, and endless accumulation of experiences began shedding it all. They let go of their excess belongings. They simplified their routines. And in doing so, they didn't lose freedom, they reclaimed it. They freed themselves from the weight of endless decisions, allowing their energy and focus to align with deeper values. But this rebellion is more than material. It's existential. It's an internal war against the tyranny of external expectations and the endless stream of choices that dilute your soul. How do you fight this battle? Start small. Begin with your daily routines. Eliminate distractions. Don't let your mornings be dictated by notifications, or your evenings drowned by just one more episode. Choose a small set of activities that center you, whether that's reading, meditation, writing, or simply being in nature, and commit to those. Let them define your days. You'll be shocked at how quickly your mind clears. Choose your relationships with intention. Instead of spreading yourself thin with hundreds of acquaintances, focus on a few deep, meaningful connections. Invest in them. Nurture them. Commit to them. This goes against the grain of modern culture, which encourages shallow networks, but it's a necessary step toward breaking free. Depth requires space, and space requires focus. Learn to say no. This is the ultimate rebellion against the culture of infinite options. When someone invites you to a new experience, or a friend proposes an exciting new idea, pause before responding. Ask yourself, does this align with my values? Will this enrich your life or distract you from your purpose? If the answer is unclear, or if it's rooted in external pressure or FOMO, fear of missing out, then the answer should be no. In saying no, you reclaim control over your own narrative. Commit to something bigger than yourself. Whether it's a cause, a project, a family, or a spiritual practice, find something that calls you deeply and devote yourself to it. This will anchor you. You will begin to see the boundaries not as limitations but as protectors of your energy and time. You will discover that real freedom comes from creating, not consuming. And don't be afraid to limit your future. You have spent so long chasing every possible option, believing that the best version of yourself is out there somewhere, waiting to be discovered. But the truth is simpler. The best version of you is the one you've already chosen to become. This doesn't mean abandoning dreams, desires, or aspirations. It means choosing one or a few with full commitment. You don't need to be everything. You don't need to try everything. By choosing one path, you're not limiting your potential, you're unlocking it. Here's the paradox. By restricting your options, you expand your freedom. By narrowing your focus, you create deeper meaning. It is not a life of endless consumption that leads to fulfillment. It is a life of intentional choices, fewer but more meaningful, that cultivates the deep sense of purpose you've been desperately searching for. You can break free. You can let go of the weight of infinite choices, of the suffocating pressure to be everything and do everything. Choose your path, commit to it fully, and you will find that the world becomes richer, deeper, and more vibrant. The rebellion is not against the world around you. It's against the world that you've allowed to control you. And in that rebellion, you will discover something that has been hiding all along. True freedom. Imagine this. You stand at the edge of a vast, open field, quiet, serene, the air thick with possibility. But it's not just the beauty of the moment that takes your breath away. It's the realization that, for the first time, you're truly present in it. The frantic race to decide has ceased. The endless chatter in your mind has quieted. You are no longer lost in the noise of options. You've arrived. And what you feel now isn't restriction or loss, it's peace. This is the deepest truth you will ever discover. Freedom is not found in having more choices, it's found in the courage to choose less. You see, the ultimate paradox of human existence lies in the fact that too much freedom isn't liberating at all. It's the opposite. It's a prison of indecision, a void that swallows you whole. But real freedom? That comes from the profound act of commitment, of narrowing the infinite possibilities into a few meaningful choices and then devoting yourself to them fully. This realization is not just a shift in mindset, it is a revelation. a reordering of everything you thought you knew about freedom and self. You may have been chasing external accomplishments, status, or success, believing they were the markers of fulfillment. But the truth is simpler than that. Fulfillment doesn't come from endless options. It comes from alignment. The more you chase an illusion of unlimited choice, the more fragmented you become. The more scattered your energy. You lose the thread of who you really are. Your soul craves connection, depth, and purpose, and no amount of options can give you that. But when you choose something with full dedication, when you commit to a cause, a passion, a relationship, or a purpose, you begin to stitch the pieces of your fractured self back together. You begin to rediscover a piece you never thought possible in this chaotic world. This, then, is the ultimate realization. Freedom is not the absence of constraints, but the ability to create meaning within those constraints. By choosing one thing, you gain everything. This is where the great philosophers converge. Nietzsche's will to power was not about amassing control over everything. It was about mastering yourself. About saying yes to your own life and rejecting the noise that pulls you away from your core. His vision of freedom wasn't one of limitless options, but one of creative mastery, where you take the constraints of existence and mold them into something meaningful. Sartre echoed this idea, though from a different angle. In his existential philosophy, he emphasized that freedom doesn't mean doing anything you want. It means taking responsibility for who you are and the choices you make. You are condemned to freedom, he said, but that condemnation is not a burden. It's a gift. It's an opportunity to choose yourself, to define your existence, regardless of external pressures. This responsibility is both terrifying and empowering. It means that you are not a product of random choices or circumstance. You are the author of your own story. And once you embrace that responsibility, you reclaim your life. No one can give you meaning. No one can hand you purpose. You must create it yourself. Carl Jung, too, touched on this idea when he spoke of the individuation process, the journey toward becoming who you truly are. He believed that by embracing the difficult, often uncomfortable task of integrating your shadow self, you can achieve wholeness. But that integration requires that you commit to a singular path, one grounded in your deepest truths, not in the distracting illusion of infinite possibilities. This is the real meaning of freedom, the power to choose what truly matters and live in alignment with it. This is where the floodgates open. This is the moment when the struggle fades, and you realize that the fight wasn't ever about more freedom. The struggle was always about knowing what to do with the freedom you already had. You begin to see clearly now. We are not born into a world of infinite potentialities. We are born into a world of choices. But within those choices, there are principles, values, and truths that allow you to live with purpose. This revelation doesn't just change your life, it redefines it. You will now understand that the weight of too many options isn't the price of freedom, it's its cost. Every decision, no matter how small, comes with the burden of sacrifice. Every yes you say to something means a no to something else. And the more you scatter your energy across infinite possibilities, the more of yourself you lose. The more fragmented your identity becomes. But once you strip away the illusions of endless choice, you discover something even more powerful than freedom: clarity. And with clarity comes focus. With focus comes depth. And with depth comes fulfillment. This is where the true power lies. Not in expanding your horizons endlessly, but in diving deep into one meaningful direction, knowing that by doing so, you are reclaiming your sovereignty over your own life. Now, in this quiet space, you can see the world for what it truly is. Not a maze of confusing options, but a canvas of potential, where every choice you make is an intentional brushstroke that brings you closer to the person you were always meant to be. You don't need more options to be free. You need fewer. And in those fewer, you will find the power to create a life of meaning, depth, and authentic joy. This is the ultimate truth. The final realization that changes everything. True freedom is not about having the power to choose anything. It's about having the courage to choose what matters most. You've already been free all along. Now you can finally live like it,